Buenas buenas, I'm Kevin Ochoa, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be covering my first impressions on FabFilter Saturn 2, I was about to say Pro C2, which is a fantastic compressor as well, but today we're going to be talking about a distortion unit, which I didn't know could get better, but it did. So let me show you guys a patch that I'm making. Let me actually mute it first so you guys can hear the source sound. So let's turn off Saturn, Pro Q3 and Pro R, and let's listen to the Citrus patch by itself. This is a very simple sawtooth synthesizer. Now I'm going to turn on Saturn 2, Pro Q3, which is just doing a little bit of EQing, and Pro R. Check this out. That is all Saturn, guys. All right, so let's take a look at the individual bands first before we go into look at the modulators themselves. So first up, let me clone that Saturn and mute the original one, and let's start off at init. Clean. There we go. So we get just a gentle saturation like we did in the original Saturn. And if we go back to saturation, we see that we have the heavy one. However, now we have other additional distortion models and more effects built in. Let's go into the effects and go to breakdown. That is so cool, guys. So we got these effects built in now, which are so cool. They're just so fascinating. Let me go to rectify. I believe they had rectify on the old one as well. We have destroy. And I think some of these were on the old one. Let me load up the FabFilter Saturn 1 just to see. Saturn. If I can spell. And as you guys can see, I just installed my a new version of FL and a new version of the new version of Saturn on my computer. It's a brand new computer. If I press F8, I don't have any special plugins on my FL Studio folder, so it's a it's a brand new install of everything. So you can see here with the old Saturn, we have all these sources. It's count them: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 models, and now we have many more inside Saturn. So let's count them again: 1, 2, 3, 4. Go to 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. So I think almost double the amount of different models in here. And I love some of the ones they've added. Like, look at the amp plexi. You run that through a tape style delay through a FabFilter Timeless or whatever tape delay effect you like, and that's going to sound beautiful. I would really like to try out Repro 5 with this. I know it's going to sound amazing. So let me go ahead and start recreating that patch that I had. So the first band that I did, I used the breakdown because I wanted to create a pitching down effect, a subby effect, to make the that type of thing. I know I can't sing, so don't make fun of me. But here we go. There you go. The breakdown gives me that effect. So now I'm going to add a modulation source to modulate the drive. So I'm going to select X LFO and modulate my drive. Before I do that, though, I have to bring the drive all the way down because I want this to be from high to low. Actually, I could leave it up there now that I think about it. However, I did so many crazy modulations. So like I said, it was literally the first preset I was making with Saturn. So I did so many layers that you'll see later down in the video. However, I'm going to keep it down over here because I'm going to use this modulation as a source later on. So let's use that LFO, set it to half a measure. Now this is not traveling all the way up and down an octave, so let's push it all the way up. And now you can see here my little lights around my ring, and now we have full modulation. And as of right now, we have a sine wave modulating, so I want to change this to be a bit more like a square wave. So I'm turning down the glide here to remove some of that smoothness, and I'm going to put it right down in the center. Awesome. Now, if I pull this down, further down, you notice that there's going to be a little click, so I'm not going to want to hear that. So I'm going to push this up a tiny little bit past the 0 points. So let me press Shift to move in very small increments. And this goes for most FabFilter plugins. You just press Shift. And now you don't get that click. And this is going to be much more apparent later down the road. So you guys get a sense now of where to load up your amp models and where to add modulation sources. So this plus button. Furthermore, I can change tones. By changing the bass band, the mid band, the treble, and the presence on every band that I have inside Saturn, which is amazing. Now, there's also feedback and frequency. So if I made the tone a little bit brighter, that feedback is a bit more noticeable. There's also a mix knob right here. And now you can hear that the sound overlaps. So you're getting both the pitch down effect and then being pushed up. Now, if I was using something different like an amp, let's do the British pop amp. And we play the chords or the notes here. Now, I also want you to notice something that's going on with the GUI. It's flashing. So this tells us when there's been modulation. So as of right now, it's saying, hey, there's no modulation right now when the envelope is down, and then boom, there's a lot of modulation. Like that. If I made this a bit smoother, instead of straight up flashing off and on, it's going to do it a bit more smoothly. It's going to go instead of just turning off and on. And let's turn the mix all the way up so you can hear the whole thing in context. And we pull the glide down. We get the sense of both having a cleaner signal and having a more driven signal. So we have better understanding now of all the things here. Again, we can drag this modulation, put it basically anywhere. We can drag it on the tone right here. We can even invert this. And if I go back to that effects and go to the breakdown, you guys can hear now how I got that pitching low and then pitching high a couple octaves effect that I did in my original patch, as you can hear here. If I go to this, I believe it's this LFO right here, and I click on that the modulation button right here, we can see the different levels of modulation I'm doing on every single parameter this LFO is modulating. So we have it on the drive, on the band 1, on the mid band right here, as you can see right here, and then I'm doing it on the bass, on the B2 drive, on the bass, the presence as well, and B4 bass. And you can see here that I'm inverting some of these. So I'm making them act differently. So one of them is creating a drive in the lower register, which is pitching down because that's the effect that the model has loaded. And then we are essentially overdriving the tones in another one of the bands. And we'll get to that a little bit later. Okay, so now that we understand the routing and how things work inside Saturn, let's go ahead and try to recreate that patch from scratch. So let's go Saturn 2. Now what I was going to do was basically just running through the different presets that Saturn has. They're crazy. And I'm doing the modulation ones just because I really want to highlight how easy it is to use the modulations inside Saturn. As a matter of fact, let's make the GUI just a tiny bit bigger. Medium. Oh no. I was already in large. Let's go for extra large. Bam. Okay. It's a little bit easier for you guys to see. And if you see here, there's many different types of modulations. And we have a slider, which can also become an XY matrix, as you see over here. And you also have envelope generators that work basically like a synthesizer's ADSR. So if I were to modulate that to the level of this guy right here, and only make it go positively, that sounds a bit different than what we had started with. We also have a MIDI source, XY controller, XLFO, and those we can also sort the slots. But for right now, let's keep on clicking on the presets. Eventually, I got to this Tremolo preset, and I thought what they were doing was cool with the wobs on top, right? And then I kept clicking. And I thought this this chord preset was also really cool. And as a matter of fact, they also had a minor chord preset where they're basically overdriving the tones, which creates minor major chords. And I decided to go with it, but instead of having the mix at 40%, I put the mix all the way to 100, so I don't get any of my original signal. Now, I decided to, like I said, take inspiration from the other preset that I saw earlier and create a little top line to go along with the bass that I had thought of earlier. So let's put in the bass first. So again, we're using, this preset was already using the breakdown feature. So I got the effects breakdown. That's add a source, an XLFO. Again, we'll set it to be half a measure, and then we'll set the glide all the way over here to basically create a square wave or an on and off wave. Tell it to modulate the drive, pull the drive all the way down, and push that modulation from 0 to 100%. And then we invert it so that the pitch down note is on the 1. The next thing that I did was I turned this all the way down so that it's only affecting the first harmonic. And while I'm at it, I'm going to try and recreate that modulation that I had on the bass, or the mid bass frequency right here, to create that second note. And I'm going to push this up. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is go back to the high band. I'm going to slow it real quick. First of all, it's pan all the way to the left, so let's bring that to the center. Whoa. There we go. And because it's using the breakdown, I'm not having a lot of the high end because it's being pitched down. So I'm going to change this to a different type of distortion. So I'm going to use an actual distortion this time, not an effects one. I'll use tube, and I'll use warm tube. And you hear that as I push it up higher, there's more brightness. Now what I'll do is bring the tones down so we're not destroying our ears. And what I'll do is add a new LFO, not an XY controller. New LFO. Send it to the tones. I keep calling them tones, but they're really... Well, they are tones, but they're just different bands within that band. It's kind of weird, but eventually you get used to it. It's really, really helpful. It really allows you to create a very specific tone inside your plugin, whereas other distortion units have a single sound. This one can have many sounds. Okay, so let's modulate this guy by a quarter note LFO. You see, now my modulations are sounding a bit more like a hi-hat, like a little percussion or a shaker. I think a shaker would be better. And it's doing this. And in the meantime now, our bass is playing some bass notes. And things sound out of key right now, but they're getting key in a bit. Let's go back and focus on the main part over here on the top. Now, I want the sound to come in on the 1, so I'm going to flip the polarity of this LFO. Should I say the polarity should be the start and the stop, or the phase of the LFO. So here now, it comes in on the 1 immediately, like a click. You can even change the direction of this by changing the glide position. Right? So if I push this all the way down, change the glide on this. You can get some like transient effects. Just be Armin van Buuren. That's so funny. But yeah, so if I set this to 1/4 and back to the sine, you get some more of effect like a shaker. I can change the frequency offset here. So if I wanted to do triplets, I could do so right here. I can also change the way this is ramping. So if I change this guy, this is now ramping up. Again, if I had flipped this over here, it'd be ramping down as it normally would right here. Once I flip it to the other side, it ramps up. But because I have the starting position of the LFO starting up top instead of bottom, it does the opposite. So that's a different, interesting way to approach it. If you want to have a percussion that's a little bit more snappy, you could do that. But for now, let's keep it like this. And if I change the tube type to, let's say, a broken tube, the changes are kind of minimal. I'm going to keep it on warm because I am going to overdrive this signal later with, I believe it's this guy as well. So let's try to do it right now. It might be a little bit too much, but let's invert this. Now let me fix the breakdown over here because it's on the wrong pitch. So let's set this to center. And let's put the mix all the way to the right to make sure that we're not getting any of the original signal. And set this to 0. Now we're all synced in the right pitch. And what I've done later is I broke down the mid bass and the mid section. So essentially what I wanted to create now was the string section, and what I do is I'll grab a another LFO and I'll use that to modulate the third band inside my my band right here, and I'll go back to tube. Actually, I'm going to select amp and the plexi amp because I don't want higher harmonics to be created after a certain point. And we saw with the plexi amp earlier that it doesn't create higher harmonics like you could do with, let's say, a warm tube. If you push that warm tube, that's going to accentuate all these other higher harmonics. If I went to saturation, went to gentle, or if I went to heavy saturation, they all allow to create a higher frequency. So if I go back to amp and select plexi amp, even though I drive this, it's only allowing me to create frequencies a little bit past 5K. So let's bring this a little bit down. Now what I'll do is I'll send this LFO, send it to the tone. Okay, so now we starting to have a little bit more of a sound like a string section. I'm gonna bring some of these other tones down. It might be a little too much, so let's push this down. And it's here in the context of everything. And of course, let's mess around with the bands to see what we get. That's a little bit cleaner right there. Of course, there's so much low end right here. Let's bring the level down. Let's go back to the second one. Let's set that band to be 0 or 50%. So now you're getting a bit more of the second notes. Let's go back quickly to the original patch. Just to quickly go through some of the settings, as you can see, there's a lot of modulation going on in every patch, every band. Oof. So let's focus on these frequency modulators right here that are also modulating the feedback now. So we can, if we go to the high band and I click on my feedback, I can see it's being modulated by XLFO2, which is that same LFO that's modulating those 3 bands on top. I know because I can click right here and see that. And that is also modulating the feedback right here. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's also put the breakdown all the way up here because I believe it was higher. All right, let's mute this, mute all the other bands, just solo the high band, or else I'll go crazy listening to all the other ones. Okay, let's add some tonality to that band by using the XLFO. Send it to the feedback. Oh, no, not that guy. Let's go back. You can also modulate the crossover point, which is amazing. But let's go modulate the feedback. Set it to be halfway up, so a quarter of the way up. So now we're starting to get that little pizzicato note that I had. I think, is that the right word? Pizzicato, to say short instruments? I hope it is. But it's basically creating a little tiny hit. It almost sounds like a flute that got cut extremely short, which I really like. And now we're also going to send that to the frequency. And I don't remember exactly where the frequency was. It was a little bit lower. And push the band 4 up a bit. So now we're getting more of that resonant frequency. I'm also cutting that off with Pro Q3. Or else it'd be even more resonant than it already is. So let's go to Pro R as well, turn that on. It's a very simple patch. So now we're getting quite a bit closer. Let me test out the original patch, see how it compares. The original patch is just so smooth. But it's wonderful that we're able to save presets now in the digital age, so I don't have to worry about recreating this from scratch, but I just want to show you guys for educational purposes. But that's one of the amazing things about Saturn and also Timeless, that you can create very complex patches and recall them, and you couldn't do this back 30, 40 years ago. It'd be impossible. Even today with modular synthesis, it's extremely difficult to patch something and recall it. All you can really do is take a picture of your gear and replug everything back in and hope you twisted the knobs exactly perfectly where they were before, which is a downside for analog gear. But thanks to these companies like FabFilter, we're able to recall very complex patches. The same thing with Yuhi. You can use Ace or Basil to patch things in, and you can create extremely complex patches and never have to worry about having to recall them, you know, in the old school fashion. So let's take a look to the mid frequencies compared to the original. You can see here that I'm modulating the frequency. There's no feedback going on, so I'm not sure how much that affects it. I don't think it's doing much or anything at all. Talking about feedback, you can do really, really crazy things. I'll show you guys later. Let's see. Oh, I'm also modulating the mid frequencies there too, so it sounds a bit fuller here. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's grab XLFO3 and modulate these mid frequency right there. Also, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but if you click on here, if you drag up and down, it doesn't really match what you're doing. You have to grab this and drag this a little bit to the side. So actually, this is one of the few complaints that I have. Not this itself, but the fact that the colors are very, very beautiful. So you can see the lighting and how it flashes depends on how quick you set your LFOs. So if you set this to quarter note, if I set it to 16th, we'll start to modulate even quicker. So you see that it's very, very beautiful. My only real problem is I'd like to have a specific color for the specific modulation I'm holding on to right now. That way I can address it really quickly. That way I'm not really having to dig around to see where they are. That's pretty much the biggest complaint I have about the whole plugin. But here we go. Let's continue with this. Well, I got a sound dial that I like better than what I had before. I'm gonna try and focus a little bit more on these, on the little pizzicato note on top. And the way I'm going to do that is going to the XLFO again, but now instead of using a sound wave like I have, I'm going to create a little sequence by using square waves. So when I use the square waves, I'm actually able to create steps. Set the glide pretty much all the way down. Now I can create steps to create melodic information. So I'm going to send it to my frequency as well. So right now it's pitched very low, so let's try to find a note that fits well with it. If I go back to my original patch, I can click here, see the other modulations that I have on that source. So I have LFO2, of course. Then I have the XLFO5, which is this guy. And that's the one that's creating the bass note as well. And then I have XLFO6, which is this guy. And this guy's moving throughout 2/4 beat measures. So let's go ahead and set that up as well. Let's go to XLFO, set this to be 2 measures, and modulate this. All right, let's play everything together. And there we go. We created a pretty cinematic patch out of a simple sawtooth synthesizer. Now, doing this is going to take you less time than me explaining it, of course. There's still some things that I want to have in my preset that I forgot or couldn't achieve because it's so complex, which was a little pizzicato note on top. Actually, let's bring that guy down. Maybe that's why. Maybe I have it too high. Just give him one last go. Because it's whatever. It's too complex, man. Let's go back here. See, here it actually works because of the way I have it set up. Yeah. So by modulating the both the feedback frequency and the band 4, I'm creating one little boost in the lower register of the high end to create, well, it's not the high end, it's the high band, to create a boosted frequency around 677 Hertz. And then with the help of the XLFO3, or where is it? The 2. It's the 6. With the 6, I'm helping it change the drive. So if I were to push this a little bit lower, the speed of the accentuation changes on this one, or the depth of the accentuation changes. If I were to change this to, let's say, a quarter note or half measure, you change the timing on that to have shorter moments where it's not playing and shorter moments when it is playing. Whereas if I set it to be longer, it's going to play for longer, but then it's going to become quieter for more time throughout the sequence. So as the alpha plays out at the very end, you can almost hear it fading away. So that's cool because it accentuates the first 2 notes. And let's see. Let's try to recreate the mid band, because it's such a so strange to make. Let's set this to the center again, and then I'll grab one of the bands. Let me quickly go back. Band right here is being modulated by XLFO5, which is the up and down. And then I have the XLFO1 and XLFO1 over here. Okay. So I organized my XLFOs different in the other patch, but don't worry, I'll get to it right now. They're pretty much the opposite of how I have them set up over here. Let's see. So over here, XLFO5 over there was XLFO1 here. So let's set this to, I believe it was a high one. There you go. To create a bit more presence. And then I'll grab XLFO2 and set it to be, let's get right here. All right. If I want to change the speed of all these, I can just change the tempo right here. All right, and I can further refine this later down the road. And that's going to conclude my first impressions video of FabFilter Saturn 2. Like I said, I try to create modulations and sequences with this first impressions video. I didn't get that deep into the amp modeling, except you guys can see that it is very important to use in different bands when you're doing multi-band processing. So expect the same, if not even more importance, when you're affecting individual tones like guitars. So if you guys would like to see more videos on FabFilter Saturn, please let me know. I do have a video that I will be making on distortion and why it is important to have something like high quality and oversampling features in your distortion units. That video is going to be produced probably in 3 weeks time or a month's time, as I have more time after work. But yeah, I'm simply so happy to have FabFilter Saturn 2. I know I'm not even touching about all the features because it's a first impressions video, and I'm recording this before I actually have my hands on the manual. So once I get my hands on the manual, read through it, I'll make a full length masterclassy type of video where I'm running through more features and very specific details. Okay, so once again, I'm Kevin Ochoa. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to see more videos like this, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.